An army that fights only for money has virtually zero combat effectiveness. Why do people become soldiers? Some say that being a soldier is just a job to earn a salary. That statement is certainly wrong, at least when it comes to the People's Liberation Army, because an army that fights only for money has combat effectiveness close to zero. You can hardly imagine how weak such an army can be. During the Chinese Civil War, the PLA crushed the Nationalist Army with overwhelming force. Yet during the Northern Expedition, the Nationalist Army had once crushed the Warlord forces just as decisively. And those Warlord forces were, from top to bottom, armies that fought purely for money. If war is fought for profit, then the top priority is survival. Only by staying alive can you collect next month's pay. Once dead, you get nothing. Risking your life in battle is something only a fool would do. Let me give you one example. Zhang Zan's 5,000 Q army once fought fiercely against Duan Qirui's 65,000 punitive troops inside Beijing, with both sides locked in combat for nearly 2 weeks. Fighting inside the city, wouldn't that turn Beijing into rubble? Wouldn't civilians be slaughtered in large numbers? So what actually happened? Both sides fired a total of 3 million rounds. The battle looked intense. Yet the total death toll soldiers plus accidentally wounded civilians was only a little over 20, with fewer than 100 injured. After the battle, Beijing remained intact. Even ordinary life was barely affected. Even if you fired 3 million bullets blindly inside Beijing, casualties would surely be higher than that. So are these warlord soldiers accurate shooters? Not that all 3 million bullets killed just over 20 people. But were they inaccurate? In a way, they were extremely accurate, fighting directly inside the city yet hardly harming civilians. Why did such a miraculous war occur? Because both sides were warlords' armies fighting purely for money. When war is about money, everything follows the principle of maximizing financial gain. After the battle, roughly 5,000 of Zhang Zan's Q army surrendered. About 4,000 chose to defect to Duan Qirui and continue earning a living as soldiers. The rest took their money and returned home. As for Zhang Zan himself, Duan Qirui made things easy for him, allowing him to take his wealth and retire peacefully in Tianjin as a private citizen. This was how warlord warfare worked across China at the time. Not killing people was an unspoken rule. They did not kill civilians, did not kill enemy soldiers, and often did not even kill enemy leaders. Soldiers fought for money, and so did warlord leaders. Being a warlord back then was much like starting a company today. It was business, all about making money. As long as you surrendered and handed over your territory, no one would make things difficult for you. Showing no mercy was against the code, because killing brought no extra profit and only created future risks. One day, after earning enough, you might also want to step down peacefully. Letting others retire wealthy as private citizens was also a way of securing your own future. Sun Quanfang once broke this rule and executed a captured enemy general. Years later, when Sun lost power, he was killed in revenge by that general's daughter, ending his life. If you were a warlord, you wouldn't want to spend your retirement constantly worrying about someone seeking revenge, would you? So everyone tried to get along. Being a warlord was an industry, a business. Harmony meant profit. Avoid bloodshed whenever possible. During the warlord era, China had countless warlords, large and small. Go check the records how many actually died in battle. The vast majority of defeated warlords ended up as wealthy retirees. The peak of warlord military incompetence was reached by the Sichuan warlords. Normally, one warlord controlled roughly one province, with dozens fighting over territory. But Sichuan was different. In a single province, more than 40 warlords emerged, making it the most chaotic region of warlord conflict. From 1912, Sichuan entered full-scale warlord warfare. until the Central Army entered in 1935, 23 years in total. During those 23 years, Sichuan experienced over 470 warlord conflicts, averaging more than 20 wars per year. At that rate, the population should have been wiped out, right? But no, the population actually grew, and production and daily life continued largely uninterrupted. Even northern warlord warfare had low intensity, with officers trying their best to avoid bloodshed. Sichuan was even milder compared to the north. It looked like children playing war games. Sichuan was large, but once divided among 40 warlords, it wasn't anymore. Many warlords were relatives, classmates, or friends. Even soldiers were often related by blood or marriage. In battle, they would simply fire in a general direction until they ran out of ammunition and call it a day. Aiming. Why bother? The person across from you might be a distant relative. If you can't picture this, think of the firing posture of some African mercenaries today. They shoot casually not because they are stupid, but because they fight for money. Good enough is enough. Sichuan warlords even had a rule called the 4 no fights. No fighting during farming season. No fighting during harvest. No fighting on farmland. No fighting during weddings or funerals. In short, you could fight every day, but you could not disrupt agriculture or local customs. Enemies shouting and killing each other yesterday might today contribute money to the same wedding or funeral. Drink together, even play mahjong afterward. Build connections in the industry. Tomorrow's fighting won't affect today's relationships. As a result, none of Sichuan's 40 warlords died in internal war. They all eventually stepped down and all became rich. The largest warlord, Liu Xiang, was even the uncle of another warlord, Liu Wenhui. When Liu Wenhui was defeated and nearly driven out of Sichuan, his wife went straight to Liu Xiang's door to confront him as his aunt. Where exactly do you want to drive your uncle to? With the aunt stepping in, Liu Xiang could only smile awkwardly and say, "Since auntie has spoken, let uncle stay in Yan." And so Yan became Liu Wenhui's final territory. War was reduced to child's play. Civilians would even gather at the edge of battlefields, watching like spectators at a show and cheering. Tell me, what combat effectiveness could such an army possibly have? Why would soldiers risk their lives for such warlords? If an army fights only for money, its combat power will inevitably be no better than that of the warlords. When Japan claimed it could defeat China in a few months, it wasn't pure arrogance. If you understood the combat power of the warlords back then, you might have thought the same. Chinese warlord armies were, in many ways, worse than some African forces today. Being looked down upon was entirely normal. This farcical warlord chaos was completely transformed by the Northern Expedition. The expedition advanced like a torrent. 100,000 National Revolutionary Army troops crushed 700,000 Beiyang warlord forces. The reason was the 3 principles of the people. An army armed with the 3 principles no longer fought for money, but for ideology. At the time, only idealists believed in these principles, yet an army of idealists was terrifying. They dared to fight to the death, delivering a dimensional strike against the warlords. As Chairman Mao said, "Revolution is not a dinner party." Here, revolution refers to the 3 principles of the people and communism. A dinner party refers to warlord warfare. That is why history calls the Northern Expedition and the Liberation War revolutions, but never calls warlord conflicts revolutions. Once ideology appeared in China, war truly began to draw blood. Why did the combat effectiveness of the Northern Expedition Army collapse after the April 12, 1927 counter-revolutionary coup? Because the coup destroyed the 3 principles, turning the army into one that no longer fought for ideology. A nationalist army armed with a half-crippled ideology was only marginally stronger than warlord forces, having lost its qualitative edge. Beyond the 3 principles and communism, there is also nationalism. An army armed with nationalism is equally formidable. The Sichuan army, which seemed laughable during Warlord infighting, shone brilliantly in the War of Resistance against Japan. Once despised, it became a main force of resistance. During 8 years of total war, China mobilized 14 million soldiers. Sichuan contributed 3.2 million, 1/5 of the total. They fought countless hard battles, with entire divisions and brigades wiped out repeatedly. By the later years, most Sichuan troops were barely youths. The able-bodied men had almost all died. Before going into battle, Sichuan units raised banners bearing the single word, death. These death flags are still preserved in museums today. Because of nationalism, the Sichuan army stopped fearing death. Their combat reputation was simple: weak at home, fierce abroad, ineffective in civil war, deadly in foreign war. Rao Gouwa, a Sichuan general and former warlord, had achieved nothing in decades of internal fighting. But when the war against Japan began, he chose national sacrifice. After taking an oath, his unit was reorganized as the 145th Division. Its first battle was Shanghai, clashing head-on with elite Japanese troops. Later, they defended Guangdi to block the advance toward Nanjing. Overwhelmed by superior force, their position was breached. Rao Gouwa committed suicide rather than retreat, and the entire unit was wiped out. For decades of warlord fighting, hardly a single leader died. Yet on the anti-Japanese battlefield, martyrs were countless. Before the war, Sichuan troops were terrible. During the war, they stunned the nation. Afterward, they declined again. After joining the PLA, their combat power exploded once more. So it was never that Sichuan troops couldn't fight. It depended entirely on what they were fighting for. For an army to be effective, it must be armed with ideology, whether the three principles, nationalism or communism. Without ideology, it collapses at first contact. Among them, communism was the purest and most powerful. Many soldiers who once served merely for pay became legendary heroes after being armed with communist ideals. That is why. Why could the PLA crush the Nationalist Army? Why could the Nationalist Army crush the warlords? I think you now know the answer. The despised warlord armies could still easily defeat the Qing dynasty's elite forces. All were Chinese soldiers, so why did Qing troops fail again and again? Why did the 8-nation alliance defeat them as easily as children? While later the Chinese volunteers defeated a 15-nation coalition in Korea despite inferior equipment. The difference was not paid out, it was ideology communism. Every PLA soldier fought not for money. Every martyr who died resisting Japan did not fight for money. If money were the motive, there would have been no need to fight to the death. It is because of their existence, because of their blood and sacrifice, that we enjoy our lives today. Therefore, every one of them is our hero.